Hello, I'm Suzanne Yates of Well Mother, and today we're going to be looking at exercises for the girdle vessel, which is the vessel that goes around the pelvis. And we have to imagine it not just as a thin line, but really as this whole big band of energy which goes around and around the back as well and through the perineum. Girdle, like a panty girdle. So try and keep that image in mind as we do this. The other important thing that we still need to be aware of is the midline, because the girdle vessel goes around, but it also goes inside and it links up with the penetrating vessel, conception vessel and governing vessel. So we need to be aware of the midline aspect of it. So we've got to, don't forget this midline energy from the perineum to the head, which we're going to be moving around. So to start with, we need to make sure that we're in a good position. Our feet are anchored to the ground. We have a silk thread attached to our coccyx, our tailbone, the bottom here, which lengthens the lower back, which gives space for Ming Men, governing vessel 4. And we can imagine the pelvis like a basin. We don't want to be tipping forward because all our jing or our essence will spill out. We want to have lengthening here, and we hold our energy within. There's a container. So we'll be engaging our abdominal muscles and our pelvic floor. But we also still want to have a nice connection with the rest of the spine. So we have a silk thread attaching to the top of the head. So we have a lengthening through the spine. And now we want to focus on our breathing. As we breathe out, feel our abdominal muscles drawing in and our pelvic floor drawing up. Breathing in, feel the lengthening of the spine. And we want to be really aware of this whole midline energy going around the pelvis and the hara. So we're focusing on girdle vessel, but also it's very much linked with the hara, the energy of the hara, which is very important for when we're doing shiatsu. So first of all, we're going to just do a few movements of a figure of 8. So we come into the centre. So we want to keep finding the centre. So we move the hips to one side, and we're describing a figure of 8 on its side, coming back to the centre. We can have our hands on our hips because there are important points on the front of the anterior superior iliac spine, this bit of bone here, at gallbladder 27 and 28, which are important points for the girdle vessel. So we put our hands here and we can feel this movement as we're moving through here, doing this figure of 8, feeling all around. So we're feeling the outer parts of the girdle vessel and deep into the inside, the centre, keeping that midline connection. And feeling the rhythm that feels right for you. And then, yes, at some point you might want to just relax your arms so your shoulders are nice and relaxed. And then gradually bring that circling back to the midline, to resting in the centre and just feeling how the girdle vessel and the hara feel now. Breathing nice and slowly and deeply, feeling the outer quality of the energy and the inner quality. This connects very much with how we have the movement between the lower part of our body and the upper part of our body. So now we're going to do a movement where we move our hara, our girdle vessel, a bit more vigorously. For this one, there are 2 options. You can either be bringing your toes away from the ground as you come through like this, or you can have your feet static. If you're pregnant, it's usually better to have more of a fluid movement because you need to give more space for your baby. But if you're not, you can just decide which feels better. So basically, the movement comes from the centre. This is a very good exercise for really feeling how maybe our arms are going to move, but this isn't where the movement starts from. The movement starts from here. And we're basically just going to rock from side to side and then let our arms follow the movement. And just, so we're not trying to do anything with our shoulders or our arms, we just let that follow the movement that comes from the centre. So of course our legs are going to move, have a slight twisting movement. As our arms move a little bit more, we might find that we're tapping the kidney area on our back. We might tap the front, but always coming back to this centre and feeling all around as we do this movement. And just continuing to breathe slowly and deeply. But you might feel, actually, oh no, I want to lift my foot away and get more of a movement as I come around. But always bring your attention back to the centre, to the girdle vessel and the hara, and everything comes from that centre. And then you can gradually slow the movement down, maybe just bringing your feet to resting. And then just feel the quality of the girdle vessel now. And noticing actually now between the left and the right, are you feeling an even quality between the left and the right? Or are you resting more on your left side or more on your right side? You try and feel that there's an evenness between the two sides. We're now going to do an exercise that may help you become more aware of the differences between the two sides. And it works a lot the transverse and oblique abdominal muscles as well, which are part of the girdle vessel. This one we really want to try and isolate the movement as much as possible in the hips, so we're not moving our shoulders, and basically we just bring one hip up and down, breathing out, draw it up, breathing in, bring it down, up and down for a few times on one side, and really try to keep the shoulders still, and then after a while you can do the same on the other side. And you may well notice there's quite a difference between the two sides. So girdle vessel is a very yang vessel, and it's quite nice. If we now open our legs a bit wider, we can feel how it supports, again, a movement from the centre going into the legs, and how the legs also need to work to support the girdle vessel. And we can gradually come down as low as you can. Obviously not to do this if you have hypermobility in the pelvis, because it's quite a strong exercise for the pelvis. And then we can rest. Maybe extend your arms and rest. But also you can do a little bit of moving from side to side. Really feel, again, the difference between the left and the right side. And then you can gradually go lower and lower. And you might even want to stretch out your legs here. Feel that movement between the upper and the lower body. And then come more into a squatting position. But really still feel that movement coming from the centre. So don't strain if this is uncomfortable on your knees or your hips. These are quite strong exercises to show the dynamism of the girdle vessel. That's great. And to feel it all around. And then we can gradually work our way back up. You might want to have your legs wider as you come up. Great. Feeling the space around you a little bit as well with your arms. And then slowly coming to standing. That's a little bit more vigorous. Resting. So after that, we're going to get a ball and just sit down. So this is a nice, easy way of working the girdle vessel. You can get a ball So make sure the ball isn't too low so that you don't have a nice space between the hips and the legs. And again, on the ball, you can just sit and move your hips and really get the energy flowing in the girdle vessel, which is an area that's often not that activated if we sit on static chairs. But if we move, we can really get things flowing and circulating. We're working our abdominal muscles, making sure that you still have a nice upright lengthened spine. So this time the coccyx, feel a connection, a silk thread going down through the centre of the ball. Top of the head up to the ceiling, the roof, the sky, because we don't want to be slumping. If we're slumping doing this, we're not using our abdominal muscles. So make sure you're really sitting nice and upright on the ball, and then you can do some circling and still perhaps feeling this figure of 8, or just moving around from side to side and coming back into the centre. And then at some point just pausing, just feeling how the girdle vessel feels in this position. So you could do this for hours. So the next exercise we'll do is still using the ball, and this time we're coming onto the floor. So do make sure you've got padding for your knees here. You've got a mat, and you may, rather than leaning on the plastic, want to put a cloth over the ball. So when we lean over the ball, it's important we don't hollow our lower back. We can just rest on the ball. And again, how much you rest, you probably don't want to put too much of your upper body on the ball because that probably wouldn't be very comfortable. More just think about resting your arms, almost hugging the ball like this, resting your head, and then you can just circle on the ball. But do try and feel that the movements, rather than coming from your arms moving the ball, you rest and then you let your centre, your hara, your girdle vessel initiate the movement. And so you can start with just circling movements. I would probably not go too quickly. You don't want to make yourself feel slightly nauseous by doing this. And you may want to be quite still, but you might just feel a little bit of movement arising from your centre. Always feel that the movement is coming from your centre, from the girdle vessel, and you're not hollowing in the area of the Ming Men. So again, we could rest like this for a really long time, but we could also do some movements where we lifted, as long as we don't have problems with our pubic bone, we can lift up one leg and do some rocking forwards and backwards with the leg up, which is nicely going to work all this inside part of the girdle vessel as well. So we can be going forwards and backwards. We could be doing circling movements if we wanted to. And of course, at a certain point, you need to do it on the other side because there's probably a difference between the two sides. This is the thing, it's the all around the pelvis, so there may be differences between your left and your right side. And the beauty is if you have a ball, you can always just rest. Because of course you could do this exercise if you carry on doing it on the balls, but I'm going to put my ball to one side. We could always do these movements without a ball as well, but sometimes people find it harder to relax their shoulders, and if people have got issues with their wrists, they may find it easier to do with a ball. So that's why I give the two options for this exercise. And then after a while, you can come back to centre. It's more restful, obviously, to stay on the ball, but I might just stay like this for the moment. Come back to the centre and feel how your girdle vessel is in this position. And there is an exercise like we did standing now where you can engage a bit more one side, just looking over your left shoulder to your left hip, shortening here, keeping the hips aligned on the other side, and then coming back to the centre and then looking to the other side. So I'm not switching this hip away as I go to the other side. I try and keep that side fairly stable and I look to this side, then I come back to the centre. So, sorry, this one you need to do without a ball. So once you finish resting, you can try doing this one because you'll need to have both hands down. Then you come to the centre. So you do the stretch on the out breath, coming back to the centre on the in breath. It's kind of like we did standing to really engage the side part of the girdle vessel.